Well, hey guys, hope you're doing well. You're listening to the Timmy Riggs podcast, Life in the Meantime, where the goal is to help build healthier whole lives so we can build a healthier whole world. Today I'm excited because I sat down with my brother. He lives in Florida, and we talked about a lot of different things. His name is Nate Riggs, and he was a special ops rescue diver in the Navy. He started in real estate in 2008, so a terrible time. He knew that's what he wanted to do, but he decided to join the Navy for a little while, went the helicopter rescue swimmer route, did that for 10 years, and then recently, the last 2 years, he has been running his real estate business. He now has it into a team of 4, and he's doing amazing. And we touch on the fact that we are truly both in the meantime of where we are in life and where we're going. And he gives some good insights, and he's just someone that I talk to every day, multiple times a day. And so I figured I would record us having a conversation. And so without further ado, here you go. All right. So I'm here with my brother, Nate Riggs, and we talk a lot. So this was the first thing I was thinking about, Nate, when I was thinking about like how they get started, because sometimes it's hard to figure out how to get started. You and I talked yesterday. We talked 7 times on the phone. Okay. So for preference, I live in Oklahoma. Nate lives in Florida, where we grew up, and we talk all the time. So people who are really close to me will be like, oh my gosh, like you and your brother, you guys are so close. Like you talk every day. Like that's really awesome. Like that's a really cool thing that you guys have. And I'm like, yeah, it is really cool. And I started thinking about it, and I would tell people like, we're super close. Like, but there was a time when we weren't. And when we were kids, I feel like we were close as kids, but there's a 5.5-year age difference. So like there's, we just kind of were different in general, but like you were a good big brother. But when I went to college and you were in the Navy, like we didn't talk at all. You remember?
Yeah, this is true. Probably because I was in the Navy and you were in college in Oklahoma, but yeah, at 2 totally different spots. That was a, intense career. I was path I was on, and you were still trying to figure out yourself, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about you being in the Navy in a second. But so what I want to give, because my whole thing is about becoming healthier in a whole, right? And so one of the 6 components is like your relational health. And so I think that what's important is when I look back to, okay, how did we get to this place? How did we get to this place where on a daily basis, like it's kind of not that random that we might have 6 phone calls, like, and part of it was you went through your divorce. Okay. Well, I spent a lot of time about that, but Mom would call me and be like, hey, Nate's in a tough spot. Like, and we've never talked about this. Like, can you talk to him? And I literally was like, Mom. And I remember talking to my wife and being like, we don't have a relationship. Like, I don't know, like even when you came to my wedding, you were kind of a jerk. I don't know if you remember, but you were like, and I'm not trying to down you, but it was like you were in a tough spot in your life. So you were like, trying to make it all about you. And I was like, it's my wedding. Like, and I even got mad at you because the marriage certificate you had to write really clearly. They told me like 10 times at the place, like make sure the signature is clear and
it was the sloppiest signature.
And I'm watching you sign it, and you're just drawing circles. And I was like, what the heck? And I'm literally screaming at you. Everyone's dancing, have a great time. And I'm yelling at you in this barn about how you just like, it's ruined. Like now it's pointless. We're going to have to get a new one.
You desecrated the day.
But basically it came to, me being willing, and I think you too, but just picking up the phone and being like, all right, hey, how's it going? And you're like, yeah, not awesome. I'm like, oh, great. But then we just slowly more and more, and we kind of just start sharing more about what we were doing and where we were at in our lives. And so like, I just think that if there's someone out there that's like, yeah, I haven't talked to my sibling in 5 years or whatever, like those first few phone calls are going to be tough and hard, but I think it's worth it. Now, to our benefit, there wasn't like a cause. Like, it's not like we had like a falling out. It was just that like we were living 2 separate lives.
The age gap thing is definitely like high schoolers generally don't, like a senior in high school doesn't generally hang out with like a 7th grader.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, oh, okay. No, we used to hang out though when we were kids. We had like the go-kart and we went camping and we would do all that stuff. And Like I would specifically remember a hilarious memory where we were going down that slide at Alum Creek and you like pooped your pants or something, had to ride your bike
Yeah,
back.
I was like 8. It wasn't like I was just like. And remember, I'm like, we're like walking back to the camper, and I'm like holding my butt, you know? 'Cause, okay, no, do you know what it was? We're in the slide, and for whatever reason, like you had gross feet, like gross shoes, everything, and I'm in the slide, like climbing up the slide, and you're like throwing your shoes down, and for whatever reason, I thought it was hilarious, so I'm laughing so hard, and I pooped myself, and I pooped my pants, and as we're walking back, I'm like holding my butt because I'm trying to hold it together, and someone was there, and they were like, "Hey, are you okay? Like, did you fall down or something?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." Like, bruise the tailbone.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's interesting. Man, these mic booms. Yeah. So so the funny part about the divorce part, I guess, like I don't really have any memory of that. I guess it's an intense amount. There are things I remember, obviously, but it's a very it's a weird time that like all that, like you're saying that, and I'm like, that's the first time I'm hearing that. I don't even remember it. So
I literally would remember, like, and again, not to just make it all about that, but like you would call and you're just like screaming on the other end. So I'm just like holding my phone out, you know, and, but that's important. Like that I just was willing to let you do that, you know? So, I guess I do win the best brother award.
Okay. Well, I only have one, so good thing.
Well, yeah, so let's talk about that whole Navy thing because that's cool. And basically, even today, talking a little bit about just like life transition because we're both kind of in the midst of that, you know, and talking about all the things we always talk about pretty much every day. But talk about what you did in the Navy and your roles and all that.
Okay, so I got to start. How did I end up in the Navy? So I ended up in the Navy a little bit older. Like a lot of people go right out of high school or school. I already kind of had a life plan and knew what I wanted to do. It's actually what I'm doing today. But you know, I realized that I was like pretty young to start that out, and the timing just wasn't right. And so I kind of was like, okay, I need to get some life experience if I'm really going to be able to deliver a good product, which the product is myself and my knowledge in my industry. And so then I started looking at military stuff because I was like, okay, and I think the Navy had a thing like accelerate your career was like their slogan at the time even. So it was based around that, like, hey, like just it doesn't have to be a career thing. So I never intended the Navy to be a career. But I was like, I guess if I would have went right out of high school, who knows what job I would have, but because I was a little bit older, I was a little bit wiser, and I made a decision to sign up for a rescue swimmer, air rescue swimmer. And I made that decision because I've always been into aviation, and then growing up in Florida, like I was always swimming or on boats, or then was like a lifeguard and taught swimming lessons, and it was like a natural progression to kind of marry the two. And I was like, I wanted one of the hard jobs, one of the special program jobs. Some of them I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for that, but aviation rescue swimmer, I was like, this is a guarantee that I will make it through this school. So pretty tough school, pretty tough path to get there. But once you get there, it's pretty rewarding. So it's pretty cool. And then branched into other things. Like any job, though, it does become somewhat monotonous. And I had to remind myself that, like, you know what, like flying in helicopters and shooting 50 caliber machine guns out of the door and search and rescue and all that stuff is a job that maybe a lot of other dudes would like to have. So I tried to remember that and be grateful, even though after a while, I got pretty tired of the ground job side of it. So there's a whole politics, ground job side of things that go on as well, and the action bit, the like flight bit, and that is very small. Like, so for example, like our normal flights are scheduled for like 3 hours or something, and when you're at home and not on deployment or not out there, you're only doing maybe like 2 or 3 flights a week. So that's only like 6 to 9 hours of flight time a week, but you're mixing in a full 40-hour work week or more sometimes. And so you can imagine there's just a lot of like ground job stuff that you're not interested in. So I got back into real estate. I did work both jobs. Talking about transition, that was like 2018, turned my real estate license back on, started working that. And I did both at the same time. And the reason I did both was because at this point I'm remarried and I have a house and I have kids and a car and all that stuff. So you can't just quit the military and go use your GI Bill and go to college and do nothing. You have to maintain. So I knew, in a year and a half, I did both jobs so that I could smoothly transition. And then in January 2020, walked away from the Navy and was full-time into real estate. And we're here today building a team, and we've got 4 people on the team right now. I guess this would be considered my 3rd full-time year in real estate. So pretty excited.
That's good. So there's a couple things that I want to touch on. So first of all, like, I think even when you look at us, so we have a sister too. So you're going to talk about age gaps. Like Stephanie is 13 years older than me. And so that makes her, 6 or 7 years older than you or something like that. But I feel like in general, sure, like any family, we've had all types of ups and downs and stuff, but we've been lucky enough to be relatively close, But one of the things that I think is interesting about us, and then interesting about kind of the courses that we've taken in life, we have aggressive personalities. Like we are kind of like aggressive people. So you look at Stephanie and like she's kind of been she was an ICU nurse for a while and like kind of always in like emergency situations, and has always like found herself like, remember that time she saved that lady from the pond and she was like the town hero? Like think about the stuff Steph has done. She was working at McDonald's or something one time and there was a robbery. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
When we were kids.
They got like robbed at gunpoint and she was working at McDonald's, and she's the one who escaped
booked it out
strategically and got to a gas station and strategically got like the cops called and stuff. So
yeah, that's pretty crazy. But then one time she's driving down the road, this old lady does 360s her car all the way into a pond. Steph pulls over with all her kids in the van. And remember, she gets out and there's like a random guy walking and she's like, watch my kids, and like runs into the pond and like saves the lady. Like, why wouldn't she like go over there? Yeah. But then
live rescue in the pond. Yeah.
Right. You went and you did the special ops rescue swimmer thing. And like, I mean, you're really downplaying, I think, even some of the fact that you did that and made it and how difficult it was, and like your training, and like you had to do that whole like week or 2 week like POW training in like Maine and all that stuff. Yeah. And all my friends are like really fascinated by like you, and because like I'll send them videos of you shooting, just like practicing shooting the machine gun out of the helicopter and stuff, and so they think that's awesome. So I kind of like lived through that a little bit. So I went a different course, obviously, where like I had a job that has a little bit more like gentleness to it, right? Like a little bit more where like you aggressive wouldn't be the attribute that most pastors would like carry. And so I'm figuring out how to make sure I didn't lose myself. And that was really important to me throughout like the process. I was a pastor for 6 years. I'm technically still a pastor, but like making sure to be like, no, like I want to be me, so I don't want to lose that. And so even like some of my friends who follow you on social media and stuff are like, Nate is Timmy if Timmy didn't choose his career track. Like, I mean, we're still different human beings, but so talking about that, kind of like our DNA makeup is that side of being a little bit more like, I want to put myself in situations that are a little bit more challenging.
There's an aggressive amount of call to service. That would be, that's
good.
Probably how I would put it for each of us. So we all live like a totally different life and have somewhat different personalities. I'm the middle child, so obviously the best mix of all the personalities, of course. But an aggressive call to service probably that we all answer.
That's really good. And I would say that's what you're doing now too. So you talked about how your switch from the Navy to real estate. One of the things that you did that I feel like I also did was And that's where the in the meantime stuff comes into play, right? Because we talk about it all the time, because we call and we tell each other, dude, we're crushing it. I'm excited. I'm going to share this win with you. And then we call when we're like, I just want to quit. I'm going to go get a job at Lowe's. Like, I don't, like I just, why do I constantly have to try and achieve like higher levels? Why can't I just be content? And so we basically just coach each other through that a lot, and because the bottom line is we know that if we went that way and if we just did things that were comfortable, then we wouldn't, that's not the way that we would get to contentment, right? Like it is the challenge that pulls us to it. Right. But I would say I did the same thing, a similar thing in the sense that it came out of a different outlet. Like I started Streaker's window cleaning with my buddy because I just wanted to make some extra money to pay off my student debt. And I was figuring out other ways like real estate investing and was able to get a loan and buy a, rental property. And then eventually sold that one as the market went up and was able to pay off all my student debt, which was huge. But then just had this Streaker's window cleaning in the background and have had this pull. And I feel like that's the way that I would describe a lot of things. Like when people are like, how do you know this is the direction? And it's like, how long have you felt the pull? If you felt the pull for one day, like if we talk and we're like, let's start, how many times do we bring up business ideas, like crazy ideas? And the next day they're like, we're not going to do that. Right. But if it's something that keeps pulling you in that direction for a long time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, like, I think that's when you can be like, okay, I think there's a reason that's there. And so, not to even keep going on about it, but like, I remember it was basically a 1.5 year decision for me of like, hey, do I jump from the church? I love the church. I love my job. I love the people that I work with, but I'm feeling pulled into this another direction. And I don't necessarily know what it looks like. And I had a lot of really great mentors that I talked with over that 1.5 years. And literally they were like, hey man, you're still thinking about it. You're still talking about it. I think you know what the answer is. And I mean, even you and I had that same kind of conversation. And so I think that background building something in the background, because like Streaker's window cleaning, we've talked about it a lot. I don't know if it's the thing or it's just the thing that leads to the thing. I know that this and continuing to want to help people build healthier whole lives through speaking, coaching, all that kind of stuff, that's like my passion project. And Streakers kind of pays the bills right now.
Yeah. It is important to kind of take time because it's easy to, especially us, we're very, I think we were talking about it the other day, where even like Shauna, my wife, is very good at like, I'll just like be shouting ideas and thoughts and let's do this and we're going to do this. And she has learned enough to just be like, oh, okay. Where like her personality is more, like cautious or like safe. And that's how she was raised. And that's the household she was raised in. And ours was, I don't know what it was, like genetic or the fact that we kind of moved often or, dad was like such a starter and like a visionary that it kind of instilled that in us. But we kind of have riskier. And I say that a lot. I feel like a lot of what I do, even in real estate it's almost like kind of a game or kind of gambling. And I don't mean that to be insensitive because there's a lot of people that trust us for their services that are, I don't want them to think like, their money or their finances are important. But what I mean by that is there's no definitive answers. Like people are like, well, how much can my house sell for? Or how much can we get? And the answer is like, well, I don't know. I can tell you what the house did sell for. I can tell you what these ones are. And historically, if we do this, then this may happen, but I can't promise it or I can't guarantee it. It's not like a painter that's like, you pay me this much and I paint your house this color and that's a finite answer. Ours is just, it's no different than going to play poker or roulette in Vegas. And sometimes I feel that way. And I've said that if I was better at poker than I am real estate, I'd probably just be in Vegas playing poker and doing the same thing. But I'm good at real estate and have a passion at it. I think I'm good at it because that's what I want to do. A lot of people get into different industries and jobs, real estate particular, because they think A, it's easy money, which it's not. They find that out. And B, they don't know what else to do with their life and having some midlife crisis or something. But for me, I think one of the secrets to my success is that I actually have a passion for it. And does that mean always being a real estate agent? Maybe not. It could be owning our own investment properties or owning a different company or growing. But right now we're just building this team. And so basically on some core values, and the core values are that we're consistent and we have integrity and that we genuinely love people. And really it's just built on that. And so it's still service minded, but we're just, I don't know, man. We're good at it because we like it.
Yeah. Well, and so again, I think I kind of bringing that back to this idea of like, whether it's making the jump into changing something, right? It is that willingness to just be like, hey, I'm just going to see what happens. And so we've talked a lot about like recalibrating. Like a lot of times I think human beings, it's really important to us to stay consistent with the identity that we believe we're perceived as. Okay. So like if someone sees us a certain way, we want to make sure that we stay looking that way. So like basically what I'm saying is I think a lot of times we put ourselves in our own box, and what happens is we want to make a change or we want to make a shift. But the problem is we think, well, am I going to look like flaky or wishy-washy? And are people going to be like, oh, I thought you were doing this thing. Like I thought you wanted to be, I was talking with a friend, like who was deciding whether to become a lawyer or not. And he was like, I've just said it for so long that this is what I was going to do. And I'm terrified that maybe I'll let some people down. And the biggest people were like his parents that he was nervous about. And when he finally talked to them, they were like, dude, you can do whatever you want. Like, we don't care. Like, we're just going to root you on either way. Like, we know you're going to figure it out. Like, and so a lot of times it's like the courage that we can't find is self-induced. And that's the conversation that you and I have both had with people about like, man, the thing you did, I can't find that courage. What do you think? And we talked about this yesterday, but like, I don't even know if I can, like people are like the secret sauce is if you can explain how you got the courage. And I'm like, I don't know, like it just it was there.
I'm just not afraid of anything. I tell people sometimes that I have that doesn't mean that I didn't get anxious or that I don't have other personal issues that I like have to like be intentional about fixing. But like fear is one of the things that I don't have, and call it genetics or something. I used to kind of joke with people about something Dad used to say. And
I remember
it was my answer, and I don't know if it is the reason why, but I remember like if we were kids and you were afraid of something, whether it was something like afraid of the dark or whatever, which usually I think when kids are afraid of the dark, it's just they don't want to go to bed, and that's the like excuse. But nonetheless, like if there was a storm or anything, one of the things Dad always used to say was like, if I'm afraid, then you can be afraid. And then I would say, well, I never saw my dad afraid. So, and now as a grown up, I realized that there probably were times that he was afraid, but maybe he just like concealed it or didn't show it. Cause I know he has his own, just like everybody has their own issues and stuff too. But nonetheless, the lesson was like, oh, okay, if Dad's not afraid, I don't need to be afraid. And I'm looking at him and he's not afraid. So I'm not afraid either. And maybe just that conditioning caused it, that mixed with genetics or also mixed with life experience. I mean, I was allowed to wreck my bicycle or go fishing on John boats or, and then from there, I don't know, maybe people wouldn't get in a helicopter and dangle on a cable below it. But to me, I was just like, this is cool.
So I think that is like what you just said, like even the upbringing. So like genetics connected with upbringing, like nature versus nurture, whatever. We had a lot of freedom, and you might have paved the way for that. But I really had a lot of freedom. And as a kid, I really didn't have any rules. I eventually didn't even have a curfew, like nothing. But I also was like, for some reason, really early on, I was able to see the connection between cause and effect. So I was like, I like this. I like this type of life that I get to live, and it could be taken away. So like, I want to stay within the like almost self-set boundaries that I like recognize, but also was willing to do, just like you said, I did a lot of stuff, fishing, golf ball hunting, like crazy things, that just allowed us to kind of build up our risk tolerance. And I think that's a really good point. Like, it's not even necessarily like fear calls for two options, like, cowardice or courage. So like, which would you rather lean into? And I think that Jordan Peterson talks about it really well. Like, you want to make your kids strong, not safe. And I think there were still a lot of things that mom was always terrified I was going to get kidnapped. So she like built that in me. So I always had a fear of like adults for a little bit. But like, other than that, it was, for the most part, I feel like they gave us the room to get stronger, whether on accident or on purpose. Like,
yeah, I agree. And so, and one of the things I always say is no rules, consequences for everything. And so I kind of like, and they're good, like basically that means like all your decisions have an outcome. So there's no rules really. Any rules are made up to begin with, like a stop sign. Just some guy like made that up, you know. There's not a rule. You can just ignore it, but there's consequences for everything. You might get in a car accident if you run it, right? And somebody could get hurt. And so your life is kind of like that too. Like, you know, and then another thing I've always said is there's a difference in good and nice. And like, I'm a good guy, but I don't care about being a nice guy. Generally, by being good, you are nice. But what I mean by that is like, you know, you can stand firm in your beliefs and you can, you know, have your personality. And if people are like, well, you're not very nice, but are you good? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I think that's really good. So kind of going back to Jordan Peterson, because we've both read his books, like he talks about the weak men are not safe. It's the like dangerous men who have it under voluntary control are good. Right. Like, and he says it way cooler. Like, I don't know, but like, basically you need to see what you're capable of. And I think that's something that the military kind of really helps build in a lot of people. But like recognizing that like the goal isn't, like you just said, necessarily just to be nice. It's to be good. So I think, and again, for me, like my dad was a pastor. We grew up in the church. And so I've been in the church, and sometimes that is something that I think a lot of people get frustrated by with the church. It's like, hey, everything seems perfect, but it's not. And so it's this facade of like niceness, instead of being like, no, let's actually figure out what like the heart of an issue is and, you know, get to it. But so that's, I like that. And I think at the end of the day, for me, when it came down to actually figuring out like having the courage to do something, I kind of would play worst case scenario, and this isn't always helpful for everybody, and everyone's circumstances are different. But I was like, I live in a country where the worst case scenario is I file bankruptcy and restart, because at the end of the day, it's really about like my financial security, right? Like that's kind of the biggest thing I would say that keeps people from anything. Cause it's like, well, I've got this stable job. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and not having that for the last 6 months, like, unless I go out and earn it, it has been like a new thing to learn. Like, it's like, oh, like, and it's a new stress to build. Like, I would say that there's been seasons where I feel like I'm constantly benching like 98% of my max, but it never goes away. Like, that's just like the emotion that I felt. But anyway, going back to like, dude, like life is really good. And again, everyone's circumstance is different, but like, and it's not even going to get to that point. And for me, I kind of set up milestones, like it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Like, I'm going to see what I can do in 24 months. And at that 24-month mark, which I'm now 6 months into, like, I'm going to be like, okay, let me reevaluate. Maybe I am someone that would do better just in the job, or maybe I've figured out this entrepreneurial thing a little bit. And I think that, it takes some risk and stuff, but also knowing yourself a little bit, like what you're capable of, and hearing past voices. Like, like you have to pause long enough to think, like, what are people telling you that you're good at? People that you trust, like, and what do other people see in you? Because sometimes you can't see in yourself, like, what you're good at, you know? And so listening to those positive voices that aren't just fluff, like, I mean, anyone can hear positive things from their mom, like if they have a loving mom, but like, what is someone from the outside who is like, yeah, you are good at that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just think when it comes down to a lot of people, and I've even heard it said, like, man, you're doing it at the right time, because there is, like, as you go on, you have more responsibility. Yeah, like you can always get another job, but
It's funny. It's funny how structured my decision making is, because it seems like chaos. But then as we talk, I'm reminded by all these things that, like, sayings I have or rules that I have that, like, I built for myself. I talked about the other one a minute ago, and then while you were talking there, the one thing that popped in my head was I used to just have these 3 rules, and everything was made on these 3 rules. And it's funny because I actually heard Chad Ochocinco say something about it on his I Am Athlete podcast the other day. So we'll touch on that. But basically, my rules were be the best at what you do, and nobody can say anything to you. And then my second rule was, if you don't know what you're doing, just act like you do, and no one will question you. And then the third rule was this is what reminded me. The third rule was, what's the worst that could happen? And that was it. I made every decision on those rules. They're not necessarily just decisions, but, rule 3 helped with decision making. The other 2 rules helped me get positions and advance in careers and be good. And that's what Chad Ochocinco was talking about that the other day. And for those of people who don't know, you can just get off the podcast and not listen anymore if you don't know who Ochocinco is. But just kidding. But no, he was talking about his time in the NFL, and he is one of those guys that never really conformed. He never lost his person or his personality. And like they were talking about how corporate behind the scenes the NFL is, and a lot of guys didn't realize that. And what he says is, if you want to step into that world, but you don't want to lose yourself, you just have to be better than everybody else. And so that was like his drive. And I kind of take that even in my real estate industry. Like, I do it differently than other people. I look differently than other people. Not like I looked, like, for example, there was like a picture of us the other day, or when my team gets photos, like we're just our headshot. People are like, where's your headshot? And I'm like, here it is. But you know what? Like, my shirt's a little unbuttoned and my chest tattoo is out and stuff, and it's me, and I don't care. And I've tried to do it the way where, and then you're on this wall of people with like suits and ties, and you're like, that's not me. I just blend it in. That's not me. But in order for me to have the look that I want to have, in order for me to act the way that I act, I have to be the best. And so it motivates me even more. Like, I want to just, wear, and I'm not saying that I wear very nice clothes. They're clothes that some people might be.
I have the best clothes. No one has better clothes than me.
Nobody has better clothes than me. Nobody has better shirts than me. But
it's fine wool cotton. It's good shirts.
So I have that stuff not to like make a statement, but because it's what I like. You know what I mean? I like nice things, and so I have them because I can. But just saying, I don't ever want to blend in. And I appreciated what he said. And that was kind of my rule, right? Like, rule number 1. And I realized, I was like, that was my rule forever. Just be the best at what you do, and then nobody can say anything to you. And that actually started when I was younger, because that's how I was when I was running the pool, or when I was a lifeguard. Like, I got opportunities because I was better than other people at taking the job seriously, or at serving people's needs, or cleaning the bathrooms. I did it better to everything I did. I was like, I'm going to clean this bathroom better than anybody else. Like, and I just took that as like a pride of ownership of things that I did. And it opened a lot of doors for me. So I realized that. What I also realized is that, just as being a human, if I overslept and missed a whole day of work, I didn't get in trouble either. And that wasn't because, obviously, those were anomalies. Like, I didn't miss work often. It wasn't a habit. I for sure would have lost a job. But my point was that I was so good all the time, the 99% of the time, that when I hit that like 1% of like, oh crap, I missed work or something, you know what I mean? It was just kind of like, all right, well, we'll see you tomorrow, and wasn't a big deal. And that's because I was the best, So I think you should
a couple thoughts on that.
Best at everything you do.
Yeah. So first of all, Brian Green, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a really good example of someone like going after their dreams and like not looking a certain kind of way. Like, he's just a super normal looking, like, intellectual guy. Okay. And he wrote the 48 Rules of Power that came out in 1998, but he's written a ton of other books. And his thing is like, the downfall of human beings, especially in our comfortable society, is like we want to do everything to make life like easier, like more comfortable. And so like everyone's upset and they get full of anxiety and stress because their life isn't moving the direction that they want, but it's because they're not willing to like step into the pain. And I've kind of really been on this whole like pain kick lately, because on the one hand, like David Goggins and some other guys like that talk about pain. And I think it's easy for people to lose track of their ultimate goal, which is, hey, you don't want to put yourself in pain for the sake of pain. Like that's not it. It's about the growth that comes out on the other side. So like, I think one of the hard parts of why people don't shoot for excellence is because it's painful. And so like, it's harder to scrub a little bit more on the toilets and look at where you could clean, and it takes a little bit more time and, you know, all those things. And so I think that that's one thing that's tough. But I love how Horst Schultz used to say it, the guy who started Ritz-Carlton. And he said one thing that transformed his life was when he was training to be a, what's it called? It's basically just like someone who runs a hotel. But like, you know, the United States, I think, hasn't had as much, like in other countries, it would be like really like an honorable position to be like a butler or like a server at a high-end restaurant or something like that. And I think that got lost over here in our culture. I don't know why, but I just feel like it kind of did. And so for him, it was a big deal to be what he wanted to be. And the guy that was training him said, I don't really care what you end up doing, but I want you to promise me this, that when you go to work to create excellence, because you are a human being. Chairs and cars, they work. Their default setting is you sit on it, it works for you. A vehicle, you turn it on, you press the gas, it works. But you're so much more than that. So why wouldn't you aim at a much higher level of how you can make your work fulfilling and meaningful? And I know it's tough if you're in a spot where like you don't love what you're doing, but I think that that's always can prepare you for the next thing too. And then the third thing that I thought of, your second part, that was like, if you don't know what you're doing, just pretend that you do. I saw this hilarious TikTok where these guys were like, hey guys, we're going to try a theory that if you carry a ladder around, you can get in literally anywhere.
Yes.
And so two of their friends, did you see that?
No, but this is an exact.
They carried a ladder. They were getting into everything, like PGA tournaments, into museums. Like they just walk in, they're like, oh, hey guys, like, and they just let them straight through with the ladder. Like, and it doesn't even have to be a ladder. You just grab a piece of paper.
Okay. Randy, this is a lesson I learned from Randy Wiles a long time ago. We went to this big giant conference, and this is a very similar thing, man. This is where I developed this rule. We went to this big conference. It was in a huge football stadium. So there's like a line forever to get into the stadium. You know, the parking lot's a mess. And Randy, like, he was crazy. You thought he was going to, like, there was a big line of cars waiting to go. And it was like a 1 lane, like maybe like a 2 lane road, but obviously leaving the stadium, no one's there. And we were in like a white van, and Randy's like, all right. So he just got in the oncoming lane and went like 60 miles per hour past everybody in this van, which was wild to begin with, but nobody stopped you because they're like, oh, it's a van full of dudes just heading, you know, they must have work to do. I'm guessing. Then once we got there, we didn't park in the normal lot. He just pulled into like the service lot. He's like, hold on, I'll be right back. He disappears. No one knows where he goes. We're all just kind of lost. He comes back with a box of like reflective, like construction vests. He's like, here, put these on. Everybody puts them on, and then guess what we did? Exactly what you said. Just walked into like the back door of the stadium. Nobody checked an ID. Nobody questioned anything. It's just like you were there to work the conference, and walked in and like right up front, ditched the vest. There you are. You're there. And that was just act like, and that's where that rule came from. Just act like you know what you're doing, and like,
dude,
no one will
Randy
question.
was so that way too. That's hilarious.
That's how Randy did everything. It was crazy.
Man, those are good. Those are good rules. And I think just, you know, when you talk about life being in the meantime, and that is where like, even you remind me, like, as I'm like, man, like, how do I break into this or do that? And it's like, this is the pain. This is the place where like you truly are walking out. Like, these are the times you're going to talk about that people want to know, like, well, how did you get there? How'd you get there? And it's like, I just kept going, you know, I just kept trying. Like,
right.
So,
right. So cool, man. Well, good conversation. It was kind of all over the place. You know, and we have a dream to be success, and a lot of people do. Anybody who's successful, anybody who we listen to or see, there's one like resounding like statement. It's like everybody's like, oh, overnight success, but nobody really is an overnight success, because what people don't see is the journey there. You know, and the interesting thing about our world is we kind of have, I think like the term overnight success within a generation or two may disappear completely, because with social media and with like things like this podcast, like there is documented, like the journey is more documented, I think now.
Yes.
Where it didn't used to be.
Yeah. And I would say that's even my biggest desire is to explain, and you and I have said, like, how do I help people talk? Like, how do I talk to people about like, hey, if I'm posting something or I'm sharing something, or like, I want you to understand that this is why In the Meantime matters to me so much, because I'm trying to do that, document the journey, show you how it's going, what I'm learning at the moment, like, you know, like it never, because what do we get so worn out by? All the like gurus that are literally like, I figured it out, I'm perfect, I never get stressed, everything. Like, and you're just like, well, yeah, I'm here in my garage. My Ferraris are cool, but look at these books. I read 1,000 pages a day, you know, and it's like, man, like I can barely get through 10 pages a day, but I do read a lot. And so, you know, it adds up. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of the important part. I think this was good, you know, like, I mean, you're my brother, so obviously we were going to kind of be all over the place anyway. And I think it touches on a lot of the ways that we tick and we think and where we're hoping to go. So here's their final question. You're In the Meantime, what would you say for 2022? What is, and think about my components that I talk about, like, what is your In the Meantime this year? Like, what's kind of something that you're like, because it's not wrong for us to work towards a point B, but it's recognizing like, hey, this is where I'm at on the way.
Man, just what's in our meantime? Like, what are we trying to achieve this year? Really? The long term is like that generational wealth and retirement plan and everything. And part of that is being in real estate is investment properties, like buying more properties. So we're looking at those. In the short term, I really need a boat. And so I'm kind of committed. I could go get a boat today. I could go out there and get one, and I want to. But I'm kind of committed to locking down that long-term goal first, getting that investment property and then getting that boat. And like, I think that, so that's it.
I would say from the outside looking in, another thing for you is, and we didn't even talk on this, but you were in the hospital. When were you in the hospital?
Oh yeah. So in October I got sick, and
so you got real sick because you were eating whatever you want, drinking whatever you want. And like, it was compounding, just like health compounds, you know, negative things compound, and your intestines literally went to sleep.
They shut down. That's
kind of what the doctors told. Yeah. So like you had to go there, and it's hilarious. Cause like, I remember like mom was like, hey, Nate's really not well. Like he's in the hospital. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I hope he does better. You know, like, like we're just so like, unless you call me and tell me to come, I'm just not going to freak out about it. And that's kind of one rule mom and dad always had, was like, hey, no news is good news. So like, there's no reason to stress out about something until someone indicates that you need to.
We were never caught off guard. I've never caught off guard. I'm never surprised. I'm never taken aback. And that is a great skill to have and a great trait to have. Unfortunately, the side effect is I'm never really surprised, or I'm never really like overly overexcited. Like, wow, I cannot believe this. I'm always just like, yeah, what did you expect to happen? Like, I got sick and I went to the hospital and got IVs and really realized how terrible the food and medical industry are. And that's a gateway to the next time we talk. And how, like, because my entire intestines shut down and I can't have food for 5 days and lived off of like 5 bag IVs. And then the first food they wanted me to eat was like sugar jello and popsicles. And you're like, you're kidding me, right? Like you can't, I literally just got the best detox ever. Like that's how I viewed it. I was like, I just literally got detox better than you could have ever been, because my whole entire body shut down and just emptied out, and I lived off of water. And the first thing you want me to put in my body is jello? Like, it's just, it's insanity. So
I think that's really good.
Needless to say, I threw that jello in the trash and told him I kept it down fine. Didn't have a problem eating it.
You threw it against the wall like an 80-year-old veteran. Like, just
threw it against
no.
Change my bedpan. All right, well, we better get rolling.
I gotta go.
I gotta go.
All right, bye.
Well, hey, thanks so much for jumping on here with us. I hope there was maybe some insight, especially if you know me well and you wanted to know a little bit more about my brother, then there you go. There you have it. And I would love if you continue to share this podcast with people that you know, people around you. And it's just a great way for people to hear different takes on how we can build a healthier whole life in the meantime. So with that being said, God is rooting for you, and so am I. I hope you have a great rest of your week.